Have you ever watched someone slowly try to erase your life, while smiling at you the entire time? Not steal a purse. Not borrow money. Erase your entire life. Because that's exactly what my daughter tried to do. And the strangest part? She thought I would never notice. But before we continue, my name is Margaret Collins. I'm 72 years old. I spent 35 years teaching second grade at Brookdale Elementary. I've lived through recess chaos, glitter explosions, and about 1,000 missing homework excuses. But nothing in my career prepared me for the day my own daughter tried to sell my house, while I was sitting in a nursing home. And if you think that sounds unbelievable, I promise you something. It gets worse. Much worse. Let me start at the beginning. My husband, Robert, and I bought our house in 1983. A modest two-story colonial with a white porch and a maple tree in the front yard that turns red every fall. We raised our daughter Lisa there. Every birthday party. Every scraped knee. Every Christmas morning. That house wasn't just property. It was our life. Robert passed away 9 years ago. Heart failure. One minute we were arguing about what to watch on television, and the next minute the hospital room was quiet in a way I had never heard before. After that, the house felt different. Not empty. Just quieter. But I stayed. I cooked in the same kitchen. I watered the same plants. I watched the same sunset from the back porch every evening. And for a long time, that was enough. Lisa started visiting more often about 2 years ago. At first, it seemed sweet. She would bring groceries. Ask about my medications. Offer to help with repairs. You know the kind of attention adult children suddenly start giving their parents when they realize time is moving faster than they thought. Or at least, that's what I thought. But then the questions started changing. Not about my health. About my finances. How much is the house worth now, Mom? Have you updated your will recently? Do you have a power of attorney set up? At first I laughed it off. I told her not to worry about those things. But Lisa didn't laugh. She would just nod slowly, like she was taking notes in her head. Have you ever had that moment? Where something feels slightly wrong, but you can't quite explain why? That's exactly how it felt. Then one evening she showed up with brochures. Silver Pines Care Residence. A nursing home. She placed the glossy pamphlet on my kitchen table like she was revealing vacation plans. Mom, she said gently, you shouldn't be living alone anymore. I told her I was fine. She pointed at the staircase. You could fall. I told her I had been climbing those stairs for 40 years. She pointed at the backyard. You can't maintain this place forever. I reminded her I had been maintaining it just fine. But Lisa didn't argue. She just kept repeating the same sentence. It's for your safety. Over and over. Weeks passed. And the conversations became more frequent. More serious. More rehearsed. Eventually she convinced me to try the nursing home. Just temporarily. Just for a few weeks. Just until we figured things out. Those were her exact words. Have you ever noticed how the most permanent decisions are often introduced as temporary ones? The day she drove me there, she packed exactly one suitcase. One. Not a car full of belongings. Not boxes. Just a single suitcase. I remember standing outside Silver Pines Care Residence looking at the building. Beige walls. White curtains. A row of wheelchairs near the entrance. Inside, everything smelled faintly like disinfectant and overcooked vegetables. Lisa helped me carry my suitcase to the room. She hugged me. Quickly. Then she said something strange. This will be easier for everyone. Everyone. Not you. Not me. Everyone. Then she got into her car. And drove away. I watched her car disappear from the parking lot. And for the first time, I felt something settle in my stomach. Not fear. Not sadness. Suspicion. Because when a daughter leaves her mother somewhere temporarily, she usually says when she'll be back. Lisa didn't. 2 weeks passed. 14 very quiet days. Then one afternoon the door to my room opened. Lisa walked in smiling. Behind her was a man in a suit carrying a folder. She sat down across from me and placed several documents on the small table beside my bed. Then she slid them toward me. "The house is sold," she said. Her voice was cheerful. Almost relieved. "Just sign these." I looked down at the paperwork. Real estate documents. Closing forms. Transfer agreements. My name printed in places I had never signed. I looked back up at her. And that's when I realized something important. Lisa wasn't asking for permission. She was expecting obedience. So I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse her of anything. Instead, I simply sat there, watching her. And then something happened that she absolutely did not expect. The door behind her opened. A man walked into the room. Tall. Gray suit. Professional posture. Lisa turned around, slightly annoyed. But when she saw him, her smile flickered. Because the man walking into the room wasn't a lawyer. Or a nurse. Or a doctor. He was a bank manager. And he had come to see me. What would you do if someone tried to sell your entire life, while you were sitting right in front of them? Would you panic? Would you shout? Or would you wait, and see how far they were willing to go? Because that's exactly what I decided to do. The bank manager stepped fully into the room and closed the door behind him. Lisa turned halfway in her chair, clearly irritated by the interruption. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone sharp. But the man didn't look at her. He looked at me. And then he gave a small, polite nod. "Mrs. Collins," he said calmly. His name was Daniel Carter. 56 years old. Senior manager at Evergreen Community Bank. I had met him before. But Lisa didn't know that. Lisa assumed he was there for her. That assumption was about to become a very big mistake. She turned back toward me, forcing another smile. "Mom, like I said, the house already has a buyer. We just need your signature so everything can move forward." She tapped the top page with her finger. A sharp little tapping sound. Tap. 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 Funny thing about impatience. It makes people sloppy. "Go ahead," she said. "Just sign at the bottom." I picked up the papers slowly. Not because I needed to read them. But because silence makes liars uncomfortable. Have you ever noticed that? If you say nothing, people start filling the silence themselves. Lisa began talking again. "The market is really good right now," she said quickly. "Trevor found a great buyer." She gestured toward the man standing beside the door. That was the real estate agent. Trevor Blake. 39. Slick hair, tight smile, expensive watch. The kind of man who sells houses like they're used cars. He nodded politely at me. But I noticed something interesting. He wasn't making eye contact. That's usually a sign someone knows something isn't quite right. Meanwhile, Daniel Carter had quietly stepped closer. He stood beside my bed, looking at the paperwork on the table. Then he asked a simple question. "Mrs. Collins, did you authorize your daughter to sell your property?" The room went still. Lisa answered before I could even open my mouth. "Yes," she said quickly. "Months ago." She leaned forward slightly. "She asked me to handle everything." Her voice had a confident rhythm to it. Too confident. Rehearsed. Daniel Carter didn't argue. He simply turned his head toward me. "Waiting." That silence again. Lisa laughed nervously. Mom's memory hasn't been the best lately, she said lightly. That sentence hung in the air. Just floating there. Did you catch what she did? She didn't just lie. She planted doubt. That's how financial manipulation works sometimes. You don't accuse someone of being incompetent. You just suggest it gently. Until other people start believing it. I folded my hands in my lap and looked directly at Daniel Carter. No, I said calmly. One word. The room changed immediately. Lisa blinked. I'm sorry, she said. Daniel Carter repeated the question slowly. Mrs. Collins, did you give your daughter legal authorization to sell your home? Again, I answered simply. No. Trevor Blake shifted his weight uncomfortably near the door. Lisa's smile vanished. What are you talking about? She said sharply. Mom, we discussed this. Her voice had a new edge now. Pressure. Urgency. I didn't respond to her. Instead, I looked down at my purse sitting on the chair beside me. Then I reached inside. And pulled something out. An envelope. Old. Slightly yellowed. The kind of envelope that has been opened and resealed more than once. Lisa frowned. What is that? She asked. I didn't answer. Instead, I handed the envelope to Daniel Carter. Before we continue, I said quietly, you should read this. He took it carefully. Opened the flap. And slid a document out. The room stayed silent while his eyes moved across the page. One line. Then another. Then another. And that's when his posture changed. Subtle. But unmistakable. His shoulders stiffened slightly. He adjusted his glasses and read the document again. Slower this time. Lisa noticed it immediately. What is it? She asked. No one answered. Is there a problem? She pressed. Trevor Blake looked from Lisa, to the bank manager, to me. The confidence he had walked in with was fading fast. Daniel Carter finally lowered the paper. But he didn't hand it back to me. Instead, he turned his head slowly. And looked directly at Lisa. Not angry. Not loud. Just very serious. Miss Collins, he said quietly. Then he asked a question that changed the entire mood in the room. Did you already accept a deposit from the buyer? Lisa froze. Not for long. Just a second. But sometimes a single second tells you everything you need to know. Why does one simple question make a room suddenly feel 10 degrees colder? Did you already accept a deposit from the buyer? That was the question Daniel Carter had just asked. And for a moment, my daughter Lisa didn't answer. Now let me ask you something. If you were handling a perfectly legal home sale, would that question make you nervous? Probably not. But Lisa's eyes flickered. Just for a second. And Daniel Carter noticed. So did I. Trevor Blake, the real estate agent, cleared his throat awkwardly near the door. Lisa recovered quickly. Too quickly. Yes, she said. Of course we did. That's how real estate works. She leaned back slightly, trying to regain control of the situation. A standard deposit. Nothing unusual. Her voice had that same rehearsed tone again. But Daniel Carter didn't nod. He didn't even blink. Instead, he looked back down at the document I had given him. Then he looked at me. Mrs. Collins, he said carefully, when did you finalize this? 3 months ago, I replied. Lisa's head snapped toward me. What finalized what? She asked sharply. I turned toward her slowly. Something I felt might become necessary. Her expression tightened. Daniel Carter placed the document flat on the small table between us. For the first time, Trevor Blake stepped closer to look. And as soon as he read the title at the top of the page, the color drained from his face. Wait, he muttered. Lisa grabbed the paper. What is this supposed to? She stopped reading halfway through the first paragraph. You could actually see the moment the realization hit her. Her eyes widened. Then narrowed. This isn't real, she said quickly. But the speed of that reaction told the entire story. Because when something truly isn't real, people ask questions. They don't deny it instantly. Daniel Carter spoke calmly. It's very real. He turned slightly toward Trevor Blake. Mrs. Collins transferred the property into a protected living trust. Trevor swallowed. A trust? He asked. Yes. Daniel Carter tapped the document gently. This property cannot legally be sold without the trustee's authorization and a verified approval process. Lisa laughed. A sharp, brittle sound. That's ridiculous, she said. She held the paper up. She never told me about any trust. That's correct, I said. Lisa glared at me. Why would you do that? I folded my hands calmly. Because you started asking too many questions about the house. The room went quiet again. Lisa shook her head. You're confused, she insisted. Then she turned toward Daniel Carter. Look, my mother is 72 years old. She forgets things. There it was again. The subtle strategy. If you can't win the argument, undermine the witness. But Daniel Carter didn't react. He simply continued speaking in the same measured tone. This trust also requires confirmation of Mrs. Collins' consent before any transaction. Trevor Blake stepped back slightly. Hold on, he said carefully. You're saying the listing agreement might not be valid? Daniel Carter nodded once. That's exactly what I'm saying. Trevor's eyes moved toward Lisa. A different kind of tension entered the room now. Because suddenly the situation wasn't just awkward. It was dangerous. Lisa slammed the document back onto the table. This is insane, she snapped. She pointed at me. You agreed to sell the house. I tilted my head slightly. Did I? Her jaw tightened. Yes. You said the place was too big for you. I said maintaining it was tiring, I replied calmly. That's not the same as selling it. Lisa's frustration started boiling over. She turned toward Trevor. Tell them, she demanded. Tell them we had a buyer. Trevor hesitated. Another very revealing pause. Well, yes, he admitted carefully. There is a buyer. Daniel Carter nodded. And the deposit? Trevor rubbed the back of his neck. 20,000. The number hung in the air. $20,000. Daniel Carter's voice became slightly firmer now. And that deposit has already been accepted? Trevor looked at Lisa. Not me. Not the bank manager. Lisa. That told everyone exactly who had taken the money. Lisa crossed her arms defensively. Yes, she said. So what? Daniel Carter's expression hardened. Then we have a problem. Lisa scoffed. No, you have a problem, she snapped. My mother just needs to sign the paperwork. I leaned back slowly in my chair. Watching. Listening. Letting the situation breathe. Then Daniel Carter spoke again. His voice calm. But unmistakably serious. Ms. Collins, he said. If the property was listed and a deposit was accepted without legal authority. He paused. The entire room leaned into the silence. That could be considered fraud. Trevor Blake's face went pale. Lisa's mouth opened slightly. But no sound came out. I looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. And in that moment I realized something painful. She had expected me to panic. To cry. To beg. Instead, I had done something far worse. I had prepared. Lisa suddenly stood up. "This is ridiculous," she said. She pushed the chair back sharply. "We're done here." She reached for the documents. But before she could grab them, Daniel Carter placed his hand calmly on top of the papers. "Actually," he said quietly, "I don't think we are." Lisa froze. Because his next sentence changed everything. "I believe this situation may require legal review." The room went silent again. And for the first time since she walked in, my daughter looked scared. Have you ever watched someone realize their plan is collapsing, piece by piece, right in front of them? It doesn't happen loudly at first. It happens quietly. Like a crack forming in glass. Small. Almost invisible. But once it starts, the whole thing begins to shatter. That's exactly what was happening to Lisa. She was still standing beside the table, arms crossed tightly, trying to look confident. But the room had changed. Just minutes earlier she had been in control. Now she was surrounded by questions. And questions are dangerous things when your story isn't solid. Daniel Carter removed his hand from the paperwork and folded his arms calmly. "Ms. Collins," he said, "I'm going to ask a few very straightforward questions." Lisa rolled her eyes. "Oh please." But her voice wasn't as steady anymore. Daniel Carter ignored the sarcasm. "When was the listing agreement signed?" Lisa answered quickly. 3 weeks ago." Trevor Blake shifted uncomfortably beside the door. Daniel Carter looked toward him. "Mr. Blake, did you personally verify ownership authorization?" Trevor swallowed. "Well," Lisa said. Daniel Carter raised a hand slightly. "I didn't ask," what she said. The room got very quiet again. Trevor hesitated. Then finally admitted the truth. "No. I didn't speak with Mrs. Collins directly." Lisa snapped her head toward him. "Trevor." But the damage was already done. The real estate agent suddenly looked like a man realizing he had stepped into something much bigger than a normal property sale. Daniel Carter nodded slowly. "So the listing was authorized solely by the daughter?" Trevor nodded reluctantly. Lisa slammed her hand on the table. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "My mother asked me to handle everything." I looked at her calmly. "No, Lisa," I said. "I asked you to bring groceries once." Trevor looked like he wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. Daniel Carter continued calmly. "And the deposit," he said. Trevor answered quietly. $20,000. Daniel Carter's eyes moved to Lisa. "Where is that deposit currently held?" Another pause. Longer this time. Lisa looked from him, to Trevor, then to me. Finally she spoke. "It's already been processed." "Processed where?" Daniel Carter asked. "In my account," she snapped. The sentence landed like a dropped glass. Trevor actually closed his eyes for a second. Because he understood what that meant. Daniel Carter did too. "So the deposit wasn't placed in escrow," he said. "No. And the property was listed without legal authority." Lisa's patience exploded. "Are you seriously accusing me of something right now?" Daniel Carter didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I'm simply documenting the facts." Lisa turned toward me then. Her frustration boiling over. "You did this on purpose," she said. I tilted my head slightly. "Did what?" "You set me up." The accusation echoed around the small nursing home room. I let out a quiet breath. "No, Lisa," I said softly. "I protected myself." The difference between those two things is very important. Have you ever noticed that? When someone fails at manipulation, they often call it betrayal. Lisa laughed bitterly. "You think you're clever," she said. She pointed toward the door. "You're stuck in a nursing home, Mom. You've already lost." That's when something unexpected happened. A quiet voice spoke from behind her. Actually, she hasn't. We all turned toward the doorway. Standing there was Patricia Gomez, the director of Silver Pines Care Residence. 61 years old. Calm. Observant. And she had been listening. Her expression was serious. Mrs. Collins, she said gently, looking at me, may I speak with Mr. Carter for a moment? Daniel Carter nodded. Of course. Lisa looked confused. What is this? She demanded. Patricia Gomez stepped fully into the room. I need to clarify something regarding Mrs. Collins' admission here. Lisa frowned. What about it? Patricia folded her hands calmly. You informed our staff that Mrs. Collins required assisted living due to cognitive decline. Lisa shrugged. Yes, because she does. Patricia's expression didn't change. Mrs. Collins passed our full mental competency evaluation during intake. Lisa blinked. What? Patricia nodded toward Daniel Carter. Our records confirm she is fully capable of managing her own financial and legal decisions. The air left the room. Because Lisa's entire argument depended on one assumption. That people would believe she was the responsible one. And now that assumption had just been dismantled. Trevor Blake whispered under his breath. Oh man. Lisa looked around the room wildly. You're all overreacting, she said. But even she sounded unsure now. I reached forward slowly. Picked up the real estate contract. Folded it neatly. And slid it back across the table toward her. Lisa, I said calmly. I think it might be time for someone else to look at these documents. Her eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? I met her gaze. And said the one sentence that finally broke the room open. I think the police should review this. Lisa went completely still. Because suddenly. This wasn't a family disagreement anymore. This was something much bigger. And somewhere down the hallway, a phone had already started ringing. What happens when a lie finally runs out of room? When every excuse has been used. Every story told. And suddenly the truth is the only thing left standing in the room? That moment came faster than Lisa expected. For a few seconds after I said the word police, no one moved. Not Trevor. Not Daniel Carter. Not even Patricia Gomez. Lisa just stood there. Frozen. As if the air itself had turned solid around her. Then she laughed. A short, forced laugh. Oh my God, she said, shaking her head. Mom, you're being dramatic. But the room didn't laugh with her. Trevor Blake was staring at the floor like a man calculating how quickly he could distance himself from the situation. Daniel Carter remained calm, but his posture had shifted slightly. Professional. Alert. And Patricia Gomez quietly stepped toward the hallway. Lisa noticed. Where are you going? She snapped. Patricia answered simply. To follow our financial exploitation protocol. Lisa blinked. You're what? Patricia stopped at the doorway and looked back at her. When a resident may be the victim of financial abuse, we are required to report it. Those words landed heavily. Financial abuse. Not misunderstanding. Not family conflict. Financial abuse. Lisa scoffed. You can't be serious. But Patricia was already stepping into the hallway. And a moment later, the quiet sound of a phone being dialed echoed from the nurse's station. That was the moment the room truly changed. Because once someone says the word police, everything suddenly becomes real. Lisa turned toward me again. You did this, she said quietly. Her voice wasn't angry anymore. It was something else. Something closer to fear. I met her eyes calmly. No, I said. You did. She shook her head. You could have just talked to me. I raised an eyebrow slightly. You mean before or after you tried to sell my house without asking? Trevor Blake shifted uncomfortably again. And that's when he finally spoke. Look. Lisa. His voice was hesitant. We should probably pause the sale. Lisa whipped around. Pause it? Trevor rubbed the back of his neck. Well, until things are clarified. Daniel Carter added quietly. Yes. I would strongly recommend that. Lisa stared at both of them in disbelief. You're serious? No one answered. Because at that point the situation had moved beyond opinions. It had entered the world of paperwork, records, and consequences. About 10 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. Not sirens. Not drama. Just 2 calm professionals walking into a quiet nursing home hallway. Officer Grant and Officer Patel. They spoke first with Patricia Gomez. Then with Daniel Carter. And finally, with Lisa. I watched the conversation from my chair beside the bed. It was strange. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel triumphant. Mostly, I felt tired. Because when someone you raised betrays you, it doesn't feel like victory when the truth comes out. It just feels sad. The officers asked simple questions. Who listed the property? Who accepted the deposit? Where was the money now? Lisa tried explaining at first. Then defending herself. Then blaming Trevor. But facts are stubborn things. And the documents on the table were very clear. Eventually Officer Grant turned toward me. Mrs. Collins, he said gently, would you like to file a formal complaint? I thought about the question for a moment. Then I answered honestly. Yes. Not because I wanted revenge. But because sometimes the only way to stop something wrong is to say it out loud. The investigation took weeks. Trevor Blake cooperated fully once he realized the seriousness of the situation. The buyer's deposit was eventually returned. And Lisa, well, let's just say her plan to sell the house didn't work out the way she expected. As for me, I didn't stay at Silver Pines. Once the situation was cleared up, I went home. Back to the same house Robert and I bought in 1983. The maple tree was still there. The porch still creaked the same way it always had. And the sunset from the backyard still looked exactly the same. Sometimes people ask me if I saw it coming. If I knew Lisa would try something like that. The honest answer? Yes. Not immediately. But eventually. Because when someone starts calling your memories assets, and your home a property opportunity, you start paying closer attention. So let me ask you something. If someone tried to quietly take everything you built, would you notice the signs? Or would you only realize what was happening when it was already too late? I learned something important through all of this. Kindness is not weakness. Patience is not blindness. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply be prepared. Because my daughter thought she had already won. She thought I was alone. She thought I was helpless. But the truth? I was just waiting. And sometimes, waiting is the most dangerous move of all.